Hello and welcome to today's webinar, The 3 Biggest Challenges Development Directors Face and How to Overcome Them. This webinar is brought to you by Firespring and Quam Taylor, presented by the one and only Sherry Quam Taylor. So really quickly, my name is Julia Kerrigan. I'm the outreach coordinator here at Firespring, and I have the lucky job of helping to produce these webinars in our webinar calendar. We offer free webinars every single week for nonprofits that's focused on the insides and outs of making your life a little bit easier. Now, Firespring, if you haven't heard of us before, we are a company that provides marketing, printing, and websites to thousands of brands and nonprofits, especially across the world. Now, our focus is on nonprofit websites because that's really at the purpose of who we are as a company. We're located in Lincoln, Nebraska. That's where our headquarters is, which we like to call the middle of everywhere. So most people couldn't find Nebraska on a map if you bet them $20. So next time you find yourself in that bet, this is where we are located. And so the reason that we focus on nonprofits is that we built a proprietary content management system. And I'm just going to get our spiel out of the way at the very beginning so that you don't have to hear it from me again. But you can keep this in mind as you go along the presentation today, or maybe even the next time you join a webinar with us, because the system that we built is for nonprofits to have management and control over their website and the content that they put out there. And our goal is to build a website with tools for you that makes your job a lot easier, and finding ways that we can make your website work for you so you can focus on the mission at hand and not having to worry about the tech side of things. And the reason that we believe that, Firespring is a B corporation, so we're actually Nebraska's first certified B Corp. And the way that we do that is we've created our own Declaration of Independence with B Corp. We leverage our people, products, and profits to do more good. And we give all of these back to the community every single year by volunteering, donations, and just giving services back to our community. So it's very much at the heart of what we do at Firespring and why we believe that. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Sherry to you, and I'm really excited to have her on today. She's one of my favorite presenters that we have, if you can't tell already how excited I am. So Sherry Quam Taylor, she spends her time teaching leaders of small and mid-sized nonprofits how to shift from spending all their time, energy, and resources on low-dollar donor activities to those investment-level opportunities that lead to larger donations. The people she works with are nonprofit leaders who are experts in their field, but when it comes to individual donor fundraising, they've simply never been trained on how to do it. So it feels uncomfortable and frustrating. She helps them learn the exact steps to have their investment level asks that feel comfortable, involves less dread, and secures the largest gifts of their careers. Now, Sherry is headquartered in Chicagoland, but teaches nonprofits nationally through her private coaching and her 90-day Let's Grow Fundraising Accelerator. So I am super excited to have her on today and to present all this content and this new topic that she has for you. So Sherry, I will let you take us away. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks, Julia, for having me as always. I can attest, I talk to a lot of happy Firespring clients after these webinars. So I know you have happy clients all over the country, which is pretty fun. So this is my last Firespring webinar of 2020, and these are my little secret, kind of my favorite ones to do here with Julia. And so I had talked to Julia back in July and have created this presentation today. I'm going to share with you just for Firespring. So it's really been in the making for quite a few months, and so I'm excited to talk through it today. So we're talking about development directors and the challenges you face. And so if you're a fundraiser, you're frontline, thank you for joining us today. We're going to jump into this. So I won't take real long. Julia already introduced me. I live here in Chicagoland with my family. I've got, had 3 coworkers next door for quite a few months now, but I, in essence, coach nonprofit fundraisers who really want to start securing more donations from individuals. And so I teach people who kind of found themselves in fundraising, right? Maybe they don't have traditional major gifts experience, but they need to be raising more money. And so I started this methodology that I've been teaching for over a decade, when I had left my corporate job and joined a nonprofit and tripled its funding in 18 months, which was a wild ride. And since then, I help hundreds of fundraisers all over the country really learn how to move into those 4, 5, 6-figure regular gifts, how to find them, how to attract them, how to solicit them, how to cultivate them, and how to retain them. So here's the scoop. I have been coaching fundraisers, for a very long time, and the interesting thing that I found as I was doing tons of webinars and podcasts and frankly just teaching so much content in 2020, I realized that there had been this flood of development directors, development coordinators who were attending my webinars more than normal. Like I always have tons of people coming to my webinars. I myself have been in your fundraising shoes or your kind of on the ground shoes, and I have spent years trying to really figure out what does that really mean to fully fund an organization. And so the methodology that I teach, and I've been thankful to teach on Firespring, is really a focus on your top level gifts. It's a focus on your top level gifts resulting in between 50 to 75% of your annual revenue. And so as 2020 was progressing and I felt like there was, and you tell me, right? There was just a growing pressure on fundraisers. There was a growing need for content. And so I took it upon myself to say, hey, this is going to be a wild year. And so what do you need now more than ever, right? And so I really, I went into this and, I actually, what I did was I actually took a survey, and I studied a lot of other surveys too, and I was bothered by the passion or drive for the need of content, but I also had my students who had taken my programs, before 2020. Really, they were strong and they were securing their best gifts. And so it was really my desire to serve the sector and be that bridge and say, why are so many organizations struggling right now? And what are the characteristics of those that actually are pretty strong? And how can I equip those fundraisers really this year now more than ever? And so the survey, so I'm going to actually share with you some of these survey results. And thank you if anybody's on this call that actually even took the survey. It was really fun to watch the results come through all over the country. And so I want to share with you not only some of the survey results, because I think they'll be helpful to you. I want to really share with you the top 3 themes as they came in. I kind of could put them into 3 buckets. And so I want to talk to you about the top 3 themes. Really, there were top 3 challenges I heard from people. And I actually want to give you a path on really kind of righting the ship in those areas today and really strengthening yourself in those areas. So can we jump right in here to the survey? I'm just going to start right here at the top. Now, I asked a couple pretty big open-ended questions. And the biggest one of those was, what's the biggest problem you have, right? What needs to be fixed, right? And so most issues fit into these 3 categories. These aren't going to shock you, right? We don't have enough time. Like I kind of want to do all the things, but I don't have enough time in the day to actually even be successful. And so I heard things like, I need to find 10 more hours in the day, right? Or I just have lack of time or lack of support. I have, my job is this, but I'm also supposed to be doing this. And like, it's just not realistic to think that I could fit that in. I'm the sole fundraiser. And so I want to do it. I want to do a better job, but like, just at the end of the day, I've timed out and how would I do this, right? The second one I heard was, you want help finding and securing and cultivating larger gifts from individuals, right? I heard, we're going to talk about this, you're doing all the things. Again, not surprised, I've been in your shoes. But overwhelmingly, people wanted help with larger individual gifts, right? And so I heard a lot of things like, hey, I get how to fill out applications and how to plan an event in non-COVID years or an appeal or those types of things. But when it comes to meeting that person and leading them to a solicitation and sitting down and asking with them, I kind of don't know exactly what that looks like, right? I just kind of struggle with what to share, what that process looks like. And then the third one, you wanted more help from your board, right? And so if you're a board member on this call, welcome, welcome. In the survey, I heard over and over again the challenges of the relationship that the fundraisers had with the board members and wanting to change expectations, wanting to up-level the confidence of the board members so they could simply get more help, right? And so we're going to dig into each one of these today, but our board doesn't give or solicit. Ouch, right? Gosh, I need full board support. Our board or leadership really, I don't know if they understand relationship-based giving. So there was just a deep desire for more help. And so we're going to look at that and see what that could look like so that you can get more help. Okay, so those are the three themes we're going to walk through today. Now, I want to throw one more thing on top of this. These are those two big open-ended questions I asked. So then I asked, what's the biggest thing, like your leadership, whether it's your board, your executive director, what don't they understand about either your job or fundraising in general? And so to that, these supported those three buckets that I shared, right? It's, some, how wonderful, understand, like I totally get it. They totally understand the lift and the weight I'm carrying, but like they don't have time either, right? My ED thinks that individuals, the ask should be done by the development director and the board. They think major donors are hard to find, right? I hear a lot of that. This fundraiser wishes her board understood that cold calling doesn't work. I would agree. You can't just walk in and ask somebody for money, right? It takes a lot more than that on the front end. Wanting to feel confident, needing a clear vision to be able to share with people. And this one, maybe my favorite, is there's kind of this assumption that like, if it's bringing in money, I should be doing it. But this is actually what's keeping me from growing and keeping me from being a great fundraiser, right? I'm trying to do it all. And so, I wasn't really surprised by a lot of these things, right? Like maybe some of you are thinking like, did I take the survey? Is that my answer, right? This is the frustration I hear not only from a lot of executive directors, but development directors I work with. And like all the big studies that have been done also on this same topic really are rooted in some of these same principles too. And so, those larger studies are telling us that half of all fundraisers are expected to leave their job here in the next few weeks. Few weeks. Please don't leave the next few weeks, few years. 3 in 10 said they'd recently left or will leave the development field altogether. I mean, that's wild. So what is the solution, right? How can we bridge past that when this is not an easy job? I want you to hear me say that I understand that. Why are we here today? And so I want you to know you're not alone in this. There are very specific places organizations get stuck, and I see it all the time. And so when we look at the majority of nonprofits, 77% under that $1 million mark, 91% under that $5 million mark, I can tell by just looking at a 990 where the organization is getting stuck. This is not an easy job. And so what I want to do today and what I want to do different today is really look at some of those bridge solutions to these three topics and really hopefully give you a step-by-step plan to help you align your time with finding and securing larger gifts from individuals. And then talk about how can we really get our board to help in the process. And I mean, really, like, let's get their help, right? So what I want you to hear is the number one thing that keeps nonprofits, fundraisers from successfully raising funds is the misalignment of time with the activities that actually don't attract or secure larger gifts. This is true for staff, and this is true for the board. And I don't mean to oversimplify this in any way, but those 3 problems that I talked about at the top of the hour, they get solved when we align our fundraising with this concept, right? And so this can be best expressed. I like to share some case studies here and there. And so I have one that I wanted to share with you today very briefly of my student Simone. She actually has her degree in community health and biblical studies. And so she's not a natural born fundraiser, right? But she is responsible for fundraising for her organization. And so she's an absolute expert at her mission, but she's never needed to know how to create a true financing plan for her organization that actually leads to fully funding it. And so early on, when the organization launched in 2016, here's why she's been successful. And I use her as a success model today. When she started fundraising in 2016, and the organization was extremely small, from day one, she learned how to align her time with the activities. That's what we're talking about today. And this year in COVID, she broke the $1 million in revenue mark, and they are not front line. Today, 90% of her individual funding is from individual donors, her annual funding. Her top 30 donors, they always yield that 50 to 75%, right? She's aligned her time with the top level donors. And so today she's securing very regular large 5- and 6-figure gifts, and frankly exceeding her goal every year, really by using this methodology we're going to talk through today. And so I use her an example because this methodology has worked, and this time alignment as a fundraiser has worked so well for her. We have to be inspired. And so it works so well because she's never gotten down into those spin cycle or transactional fundraising activities, right? Sure, has she done some of them? Yes, but they're always put down in their place, right? So every hour she's spending time fundraising yields results. Number 2, she learned what she needed to do to actually lead individual donors in that ask, right? They were all kind of like, oh, don't make me do that. And she learned how to help them say yes, right? And give their best gift in that process. Thirdly, she's demystified fundraising for the board. I know. Wouldn't that be amazing? She's learned how to lead them in a way that's really grown their confidence in the process as well. So she's built an entire network of donors using her board's connectors and prospects, and even they haven't fundraised before. So I'm gonna give you some tips there. And so in order to do this, there's 3 steps we have to follow, and these tie right to those 3 themes, right? She aligned her time with that model that aligns with the top 30 as a fundraiser. She created remarkable donor experiences. Every year she does this, and it attracts large donors, and it focuses her time on the gifts that yield the most amount of money. And then she grew the board's confidence in helping them understand their role in those first 2 things, and really help them see that it's not all that scary to expose their network to you, the fundraiser, right? So let's go through each one of these in detail, right? So first one is this time element. Now, what I asked was in the survey, back to the survey, as a development director, like, what are you responsible for this year? Now, little did I know this is a little bit of a loaded question, because I mean, the answer is everything, right? And so, I mean, there were the high level, donor segments, of course, but then it was just like, oh my goodness, there's so much you guys are doing, right? You're doing all the things. You are often being expected to do too much. It's too wide of range of duties, right? Some of these are very technical and over here, and some behind the scenes, and closed door head down, and the next one is like out in front selling, right? We know that when you're too fragmented and having to do all the things and simply react to like the next request, you're never going to move into strategic fundraising. And I'm sure you feel that every day, right? Like, this is that time element. And honestly, a lot of these activities are actually keeping you from moving into larger strategic gifts. And so I find across the board, no matter who I talk to, whether you're a $300,000 organization or a $10 million organization, I find that organizations default to spending way too much of their time and budget and dollars on the efforts that yield small gifts, right? Or very transactional gifts. But on the flip side, we know that 70% of nonprofit revenue comes from such a small piece of that donor database, right? Or the names in your list, if you will, right? So when we look at the metrics and we look at you being a metrics-driven fundraiser, everything you do must center around this funding model that's rooted in ROI. What do I mean by that? So if you're on any webinar of mine, you know I'm going to show you this. You know I'm going to show you this triangle. It has to be in every one. So when I, as a fundraiser, plan out my development plan, plan out everything I'm doing for the year, I'm looking at revenue, and then I'm looking at my time and budget, and those have to be aligned because I want my top 10 donors yielding between 25 and 40% of my revenue, right? And then I want my top 30 all in yielding between 50 and 75% of my revenue. That leaves a small amount. You know, I'm being generous at 25%. Here's the kicker. When most of your revenue should come from this top part of the pyramid or triangle here, right? We have to make sure we're not spending the majority of our time and budget and energy down in this bottom part. Now, you're a fundraiser on this call and you're saying, well, Sherry, like, I'm not the one who gets to dictate that. I hear you. Believe me, I hear you. I've been in your shoes. But you have to then plan every year your revenue and also plan the time allotment. I need you presenting your development plans, your reports, your metrics, your anything always has to be rooted in the amount of time that you're spending. Otherwise, you don't have a leg to stand on. Because your time, I'm telling you, is the organization's most valuable asset, right? Like, I mean, my goodness, have we needed you in 2020, right? Therefore, every hour you do spend fundraising has to be in this high ROI. It just has to be. So let me lay on another question I asked onto this. Do you feel like you have a clear, predefined path to grow your top level donors to yield between that, you know, that 50 to 75%? I kind of asked, do you have a plan for that, right? And we all know what we should do, what we want to do, but oftentimes we're just being kept from doing it because either we have to be in reactive mode because we are in charge of everything on that one list I showed you, or we're responding to, you know, someone telling us what we need to do. And, you know, when we're in when we can move into proactive mode and actually lead donors through the path to their best gift, that's when the money starts coming in. So when I asked this question, kind of pretty much everyone said, wow, we don't really have that clear of path, right? And like, I don't totally know, like we're getting lucky sometimes, or yeah, I have some wins here or there, but you know, not really. And so when I saw this, I felt like we really knew one of the exact problems we had to solve. And so I knew that I had to help you, I guess, show your leadership, right? The things that you need to stop doing so that you can start doing the higher ROI activities. Now, the only way for you to do this, fundraiser, on this call, is to root your annual plan in metrics that back up their time. And I'm sad to say, track to that time, right? If you have to keep a timesheet 3 months, you might have to do it. I know, I hate timesheets too. I used to be in an industry where I tracked every 6 minutes. It's like, I still look at a clock and I'm like, it's 1:12, it's 2:24. Like I'm still on this 6-minute increment. But when you do that, when you can talk numbers and metrics and ROI and results to the leadership, the numbers allow you to really move from that reactive to proactive strategy. It allows you to show why just throwing another virtual event or throwing another appeal or campaign or throwing another thing on the fire, that transactional fundraising is not getting you closer to your goal. We need to move into relationship-based fundraising. It also helps you move from trying to like be everyone to everything and like doing it all it helps align your time with those single source activities. So when I say single source, I mean there's a decision maker of that gift and you know them deeply and you can go have a conversation with that person, right? Unrestricted cash. So I want you to be able to not only go back and listen to the opinions of leadership and board member, but I want you to respond in a metric-based way. It's the only way you're going to get time back in your calendar. The only way. And that's why I'm spending a lot of time on this, because time is the biggest thing. And I see it done all the time, and it really feels oversimplified. But I will tell you, my students like Simone, who I shared, have the largest cash balances or reserves that their organizations have ever had in 2020, right? Because they were focused on those top 30, they were focused on building a reserve with that, and they focused on those single source decision makers. And so when this part's done right, you have the metrics to justify why you should or should not be in a particular fundraising activity. It also helps you get off that fundraising spin cycle and actually truly create a reachable, I call it a financing plan, development plan for the organization so that you actually can, call me crazy, hit your goals, right? And you can start spending dedicated hours on the things that actually bring in the most revenue and then show the board how to do the same. More about that on point 3, okay? Now, I want to move into talking a bit about that path that to individual, mid, and major level gifts. And it's worth bringing up the absolute dread and avoidance that some fundraisers feel in this area. It's kind of a mental block, I guess. Some people love it, some people hate it, and there's a lot of us there in the middle who are like, gotta do it, even though it might not be my favorite thing to do. So let's talk a little bit about that. So when I hear from fundraisers, and whether this is the board, you might be hearing this from your board, or maybe you're feeling this yourself, gosh, I really don't like fundraising. I'm doing it, but I don't love it, right? Or I really don't like asking for money, or my board doesn't know they're supposed to be helping me fundraise. What I typically find is that some of that tone and some of that, I guess fear, I guess I'll just call it, really is rooted in this process is like a bit of a mystery to me. Like I kind of know enough to be dangerous, but a lot of it feels like a mystery. Maybe I'm not sure what to say. Maybe you have not been equipped with the right financials, information, solicitation tools. Maybe you don't have the things you need in hand when you're soliciting. Maybe you're just not sure how to lead the board or equip the board to actually help you. Maybe you're not given access to the board. Oh my gosh, that would be awful if you're a fundraiser and not given access to the board. Now, a couple other things from the survey here I want to lay on top of this middle topic. So I asked, how confident are you in soliciting individual donors? I'm talking in person or Zoom in 2020, right? And so I'm talking solicitation, sitting down and asking for money. And so this was kind of an interesting response. You know, I take this response from, very confident to not confident on the right. I kind of take it as like, well, kind of. Like, to me, the answer to this is, I kind of feel like I can do it. I do it if I have to, but there wasn't an overwhelming, like, I got this, right? So what I want you to hear today as a fundraiser, that like you might be great at tons of things on that list that I showed earlier. You're great at grant writing or planning an event, or you're rocking it in a lot of areas. It's okay. You might still struggle leading large donors, individual donors, kind of through what I would call investment level conversations, right? You're being expected to do such a wide and vast skill set of activities. That's not fair, right? And so many of you have not ever had to sit down and ask for a 6-figure gift and lead someone through the financials, lead someone to a deep understanding of the organization's need. It's okay. It's okay. Because here's maybe my favorite question I asked. I said, well, how did you get into fundraising, right? And to me, this is one of the best parts of our sector, that I get to work with people with just the widest variety of backgrounds. And so when I asked what best describes your path into fundraising, You know, 35% said, well, I was actually really passionate about the mission, so this was the role that was open. I joined in fundraising. A third of people said I worked in another role, not a program, right? And then I kind of realized I think I'd be a great fundraiser, so I hopped over to this side. Some people saying, I don't know, I just kind of like fell into it. It's like there's no really like predicted or set plan. Some people are rejoining the workforce after, you know, this woman after having her son. I had a sales background. I wanted to move into something more meaningful. But here's the kicker. Less than 10% said I have a degree in the field, right? So I want to share this with you today because don't beat yourself up. Or maybe I'll say it this way, ask for help when you need help. Because if this is your path into fundraising, like it is okay to be equipped and to be coached and to say, hey, I got this part over here, but I need help learning how to lead donors, lead an individual donor to a yes, right? So this obviously didn't surprise me, right? This only makes sense that when I asked, what do you need the most help with? Which donor segment do you need the most help with? You know, it only makes sense that it was individuals, right? By far it was individuals. This makes sense to me because there's so much content on, I feel like grant writing or events or appeals or, you know, corporate sponsorship package. I feel like there's a lot of content on that. But I also, this statistic or response really supported that there is a bit of a mystery in that larger, mid, and major level gift donor cultivation. And so I feel like, and I do it too, you know, we kind of avoid what we don't know how to do. And so I think this is really coming as a result of that. And as a result of people feeling like they need more help with individual gifts and those larger ones, it's amazing the money I see left on the table when fundraisers, I was there too at one time, we don't know how to ask. We don't know what those steps are. It feels like a mystery. And so we tend to avoid it because, gosh, that grant proposal is due next week. So let's work on that over there. And so I find that so much money is left on the table when we avoid the steps because we simply don't know them. Now, here's another concept in here that I also feel like was rooted in some of these answers, and some of the, I guess some of the money left on the table I see is really because of that lack of process or lack of confidence in some situations. Is when we kind of lack that, we tend to then make decisions for the donors, right? And so again, I see so much money left on the table when we as fundraisers, kind of before we're even to the meeting, we've decided what the best gift is for the donor. And so here's what that looks like. Maybe check yourself if you're doing this. It looks like, well, at least I got them to give this, right? Or, you know, the second one, you know, I know they gave $20,000 to that group over there. I saw their name on the annual report, but like, it's a tough year. So let's just ask them for 10, right? Because like, I don't want to offend them, or what would I say, right? So I want you as a fundraiser, this is something big I'm seeing this year, so I really want to talk about it. Next time you're tempted to really make a decision like that on the size gift a donor can give, you have to look what's behind that, because you must commit to sharing the financial need of the organization. And when we don't do that, the donors can feel that lack of confidence. And it's usually a symptom of something bigger. It's usually a symptom of, again, that confidence we're talking about. It can also mean your pipeline's dry. Again, going to talk about the board next, board helping you with the pipeline. So it can mean your pipeline's dry. And so, gosh, I got to get this 10K gift because I can't risk asking them for the 20K. It could also mean you're underselling your mission. And gosh, if there's a year we can't be doing that, it's 2020, right? But it can also mean you haven't been given, as a fundraiser, you have not been given enough time to cultivate the larger donors. And we know that takes minimum 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months. We know that it takes a long time. So let's talk about solicitations and leading the donor to solicitations. I asked in pre-COVID world, how many one-on-one solicitations people were making to individuals per month. And I'm not talking emails, mailing something, I'm talking sitting down and asking. So the wild thing I felt was that, kind of adding these two middle 41% together, 82% of people were doing very few solicitations. That's kind of wild to me, right? And so I am finding that most people, the block, and what I heard from a lot of people was that most people think like before we can find large donors, excuse me, we're struggling to find large donors before we could even think about sitting down, right? And so then the block is like, well, we need the right board. We need the right percentages on our 990. We need the right outcomes. I need the right website. I need the right donor management system. None of those things are going to help you raise money with these top 30 donors. Hear me say that a little bit loosely, right? Would they help? Yeah. But are they the end all be all? No. In order to find large donors, in order to attract large donors, in order for you to move into relationship with large donors, I want you to know that how to attract them is that you need to move into strategic investment level conversations with them, right? That is only done by you cultivating, leading, and being given the time. I know you know this, I know you already know this, but given the time to customize their individual donor experience with the organization every year, right? How do we serve that one donor's mission for giving? What do I do in January? What do I do in April? What do I do in July so that I can ask them in August, right? And to lead them to a yes. And so it is the long game, right? It's what most of us think, or maybe we're advised, to move the transaction and do it this way and just show them a this or send the right email. Does that help in some sense? Yes, it helps that know, like, and trust factor, but it is not going to lead to the top level gifts that you need to grow your organization. So when this part is done right, larger donors are more attracted to your organization because of the steps you're leading them through every year to give their best gift and then to help them get that gift every year. So a lot of people say, how do I find donors? And I want to reframe that today to, are you doing the things that attract them, right? When this part's done, the fundraising dread goes away. And gosh, we've all been there. Even we want our board to dread it less, we want our leadership to dread it less. But the fundraising dread goes away because you either have the right tools or the confidence or the plan in place that gets you to that ask. And maybe most important, especially this year, has been when this is done right, you actually have a pretty steady cash flow of unrestricted gifts. And that's really comes through this top 30 donor approach. So many groups have come to me this year where they may have brought in a good amount of money, but the money in the bank is restricted. And so they were caught in this crisis moment where they couldn't use the cash they had to really invest in the growth of the organization. Okay, third, let's jump in here to the board. I'm gonna watch the clock here. Now, I want to talk about growing the board's confidence and really helping them understand the role they play in growing the funding of the organization. So I'm going to be honest here. When I gave the survey, early summer, I guess it was, I hoped that I could design a professional development course specifically for fundraisers that really helped them get over some of these hurdles. And I figured, and to be honest, I figured it would include a lot of the things that we talked about today with specific nuances for fundraisers or development directors, development coordinators. And I knew the board would come up, like obviously it would, right? But I didn't know the extent as to how much the board would come up in this survey. And I think maybe my survey even turned to a moment of like some therapy for people too. I got to get something out, right? And so I heard things like, a board's been around 10 years and like we've never sustained a non-board member individual giver, right? I mean, that's wild, but these are the things that are going on. Our board doesn't give or solicit. fundraising is completely up to me. That's lonely. That is lonely. I don't like that feeling at all. The biggest thing I wish my board knew about fundraising is that they needed to be doing some of it. Ouch, 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 ouch. My board doesn't understand it takes time to build relationships, right? We can't just walk up and ask somebody for $100,000. It's not an immediate payoff. My board says they don't know any major gifts, major donors, right? We don't know anybody, like can't help, don't know anybody. This is a great one and has been a tough one in 2020. Everyone's afraid of asking for money, so they just insist on planning more events, right? We see that all the time in organizations that were depending on events way too heavily have gotten caught in 2020, right? Because those donors weren't annual fund mission-based donors. They were event donors, right? And so these were a lot of board comments that I want to share with you, but I will tell you, it helped me dig deeper into this issue and really understand what we need to be able to manage up and equip the boards to help us, right? So let's dig a little bit deeper on the board. And I want to come at it maybe from a little bit different angle. And so I asked, are you soliciting your board members? Like one-on-one, sitting down with them every year? I was actually really interested to know the answer to this. And it was kind of in quarters, right? It was like, yeah, about a quarter of the people are doing it. Yes, I'm doing it. Maybe a quarter said, no, we're not doing it, right? 16% said, well, we have a give get, so like we don't really solicit them. They either just give their gift or kind of do their thing, right? And then about a third, 29% said the executive director is responsible, which totally makes sense, right? And so I want to tie some things here to this next slide. And my approach to getting the board to help, I think, is a little bit different than a lot of consultants or a lot of advice we might get out there. We have to remember that when it comes to the board, they also have limited time. We know this. These are some hard truths that I'm like, I know, it's going to roll back down to me, right? The fundraiser. They have a limited time. They have, in that limited time, they have limited understanding of the process, right? Like they're experts at something else, right? And so their expertise is whatever they are, lawyers, accountants, entrepreneurs, leaders of companies, whatever it is. They are an expert at something completely different than fundraising. So this doesn't feel comfortable to them. And what they don't know, they're going to avoid, right? And so they have to be educated and led just like you would a donor, right? We have to educate way more on what this looks like so that we aren't just like strong arm avoidance when we talk to them, right? Oh, I don't know any donors. I don't have anybody who could give a large gift, right? To me, that response is this. So just like we would lead one of our donors, we have to lead the board members. So here's what I want to say. I get a question every or I guess when I used to be in person too, but most webinars I'll ask, they'll say, how do I get the board to fundraise? How do I get them doing things? My approach to getting the board to help with fundraising is to actually demystify the fundraising process by modeling it for them. Here's what I mean by that. I want you to design an awesome donor experience for each one of your board members, and then model what cultivation looks like, model what a solicitation looks like, model what exceptional thanking and donor retention looks like. Show them how great it is, right? Show them what you would do with their colleague if they would introduce you to them, right? Because they don't know what's going on. And so again, when I hear, now this time around the board, I hate fundraising, our board doesn't like asking for money, they don't have anybody in their network, hold on, only donors give at events. That's not the truth, right? It means to the board member, I don't understand this process. I have never done mid or major level gift cultivation work. I don't know what to say, so I'm going to avoid it, or I'll opt in to do something transactional, right? And then here's this last one I want to talk about a second. Oftentimes I find that the reason they're not introducing you to the network, the colleague, the sister-in-law, the neighbor, is because it's the root fear is, well, what are you going to do to them? Are you just going to ask them for money? Like what are you going to do? And so we have to solve that. What do you mean, what am I going to do to them? I'm not going to walk in and be like, hi, I'm Sherry and I need $20,000. Heavens, no, we're not going to do that, right? But they don't understand the process if you yourself aren't showing them and giving them that process, right? And so if your board is going to give an hour or two, right? Extra time, hours during the month, it's not a meeting. In my world, they have to be tied to the activities in the top part of this pyramid, right? They have to be pointed at helping you maximize your time, right? It can't be down here. An example would be in the bottom would be having the board, collect, I don't know, auction gift cards or something, or doing something very transactional. Those are important things. Don't hear me say they're not. But if I only have a little bit of time and I'm spread thin, I need the board doing the activity and becoming comfortable and understanding the process of what it takes to attract, cultivate, and secure large level donors. Now, the tricky part of kind of getting your board to help you create this pipeline, I'm all about the pipeline of individual donors, running really big connection strategies. It's tricky, right? It's not an easy process. It's the tricky part is you have to know how to manage up in a way that helps them understand actually the things that they actually might be doing that's keeping you from attracting large donors, right? And so I am big on this managing up concept. And some of you might not feel like you have the authority to do that. Start small, but you have to teach them how to do this. Big one, the annual planning strategy budget that the board's approving, the board's being part of, has to be set up to like mirror or track your ROI, what we talked about at the beginning of this, so that you have the metrics and they actually have approval and buy-in, and you're really managing up and showing them how this works all year long. That is the only way you will get time back in your schedule, is if you are then reporting back on an ROI fundraising plan budget that they approved, right? Time and money. Tricky part is you have to know how to create great donor experiences for your board members, right? You have to lead your board members to a solicitation every year. Help them see like, oh, that's actually really well done. Like I get it all the time with my students. It's like, oh, that was really nice. You did a good job at that. Like, oh, that's what you're going to do to my friends? Oh, well, then you could do that, right? It's kind of a funny thing. But sometimes we have to serve them first. I know. I want them just to know what to do and help you and give names and like be at the meeting and be at the coffee and be on the Zoom. I get it. Sometimes we can't start there, right? And maybe most important, sometimes they need training so that they can start doing the activities and maybe not hold you accountable to the other activities that aren't bringing in that 50 to 75% of your revenue, right? And so sometimes they are going to need way more training than you ever thought or wanted to have done. It might be a combination of you doing the training. It might be a combination of outside training. And I hear all the time when I do board training, they're like, I've told them all that. I've told them all that. I said, I know, but sometimes they have to hear it from an objective outsider for it to fall on their ears differently. And so I want you to know and feel like there is hope with the board, but I want you to feel the power to take the reins on it, right? To manage up, to be confident enough to know that you get to be the educator in a lot of this, right? And so, in my opinion, there's never been a greater time when the sector should be investing in fundraisers, right? Like 2020 has been it, right? We've never needed you more. Your work has supported organizations being able to shift and serve more people and change their programs and go online and jump in someplace where like they just happen to be and they, oh my gosh, there's such a need here. We have never depended on this sector more. So for that, I want to say a big thank you to the fundraisers who've dialed in today. And you're almost done here with 2020. Not that we know what 2021 looks like, but congratulations on a race that you've been running this year that is really worthy of being celebrated. I want to say that to you. And so as we move into Q&A, and I'll kind of open the chat here, I'll just quickly share with you of the professional development course that I designed as a result of this survey. This called Get Your Board on Board, and it really is a combination of coursework, private one-on-one coaching from me, and then also access to live board training. That I really feel like that is an important thing that everybody asked for and needed as a result of that. And so I always try to give a big thank you to Firespring. You guys are really just so wonderful to work with Julia. And so I put a code. You can go to quamtaylor.com, board on board. There's a Firespring 10. So first 10 signups get a huge discount on the course. It's really the deepest discount I've given as a big thank you to Julia and her team for having me, and just for you for listening today and really just desiring to be better fundraisers. So I'll flip over to the chat here, and Julia, maybe you can help me see if there's any specific questions that I can answer.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sherry. And just, I want to throw in my 2 cents as well.
Yeah,
I
sure.
have heard from people that have gone to these webinars with Sherry. If you're kind of on the fence about thinking whether or not you should do these trainings with her, if it's going to be worth it, I can tell you 100% from my perspective and from others, it is absolutely worth it. Go sign
Thank
up right
you.
now.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and thank you for those discounts, Sherry. Those are going to be really helpful to people.
Good.
So we'll go ahead. We have a lot of great questions in here.
Okay,
I'm
good.
going to just go right down in order. So
Yeah.
the first question we had come in, they're asking, how do you move from transactional relationship strategies without friend raising? In other words, they don't want to be invited to every single party and dinner and book
Yeah.
club in order to get comfortable enough for people to give those large gifts.
Yeah. So, and other than fundraising, so I actually am probably way more tipped to more one-on-one meetings than these kind of like get-together friend meetings. I do some of those too, but I find that so typically what I'll do, like when people come to me and they're like, okay, we need larger gifts, but like I also just need more people giving, like it's a quantity thing too. I will run way more of a connection strategy by using my current donors to get me an intro just to a couple or an individual. I actually way more prefer starting on a one-on-one basis than kind of in this pattern of like, oh, we got to go to the coffee and the dessert and the wine and cheese and thing. Those are a lot of work. And I don't feel like they're always pinpointed to a donor who's qualified. It might be like if I had one and I'm like busy and I'm running late and it's like, oh, let me just see if the neighbors can come, right? They're not always qualified donors. They might have means to give, but are they even interested in what you do and what your mission is? I would rather have a relationship with a current donor and say, hey, do you know anybody else who can make gifts at this level who would also be excited to learn about what we're doing as an organization, right? And then I would even go one step further. This is me leading the donor. I say, you know what? Could you send an email intro? I'll even draft it for you. I have something preset. I'll even like draft it really casual, really peer-to-peer, and ask them to do that. To me, that usually gets me further and more qualified down the line than a lot of the fundraiser approaches, is what I find.
Yeah, perfect. Great advice, Sherry. Okay, the next one I have here is they're saying this is how it is at their organization when you were referring to uh, development directors not being invited to those meetings. They said at their org, they're not allowed or invited to the board of director or finance meetings. Any advice for them on how to get their foot in that door?
Yeah, okay, so as the development director, now I'm gonna preach to the choir because you're like, yeah, that's what I'm saying, I want in. I look at your role as less of a, okay, so here's our budget, so like go bring in the money. To me, you are crafting and creating the top half of the budget, right? The part that balances it. So here's my example. Can I use round numbers? I always like to use round numbers on calls or on webinars. We have $1 million need, a $1 million need this year. That's the budget. Okay. Well, you as the fundraiser, you have to know how to create a financing plan that paces to the cash flow, that takes into account, are you trying to build your reserve back after 2020? Growth initiatives that are coming down the pipeline. And so how would you create a financing plan for the organization if you're not in the finance meetings? So I hear you on this. I might approach it a little bit more rooted in I want to approach this as a financing plan, right? How are we financing the organization? Sometimes the tone of that sounds a little bit different. B, if you're going to move into attracting larger donors, investment level donors, individual donors who also know the numbers, want to know the numbers, and actually also have had to probably ask for their own investments to run their own business, you are never, ever going to be able to do your best job if you don't know the numbers and metrics of the organization. So I'm saying those two things, even though you probably know those things, but I would root the conversation in that you're leaving money on the table if you aren't involved in the financial planning, and then financial upkeep and knowledge of the organization. You will never attract larger donors if you cannot on the dime know your numbers and know it so that you can then respond back and share with them the impact their gift has made. So I totally agree with you. This is such a misconception in the sector where it's like, here's our budget, you just go raise it. Your organizations plateau and get stuck when that approach is taken. It is a co-pilot scenario, right? It is a co-pilot scenario, and it has to be approached that way.
Yeah, absolutely right. Thanks, Sherry. Okay, we have another one here. Courtney's asking, when they don't have a prospect researcher, how do you recommend they go about feeding that pipeline for donors?
Yeah, I mean, kind of the first answer I gave to the question. I have tons of organizations that don't have a prospect researcher. One of my kind of touch points with current donors, if I kind of want to ask them something, but not for money, it really is that connection strategy. Like, do you know who are two people you know that would blah, blah, blah? So I do that all the time because they want to help you, right? And sometimes they're excited you're not asking for money. You're just asking for a name or hey, could you think about that? Great, I'll give you a buzz in 2 weeks and see if you've thought of anybody. Or maybe they know somebody and just say, could you facilitate a quick Zoom coffee with us, 15 minutes in the morning? And so this connection strategy, I don't see a lot of people doing it. I put just as much time because I want to be connecting with probably about 3 times as many of the donors that I need to be giving, right? And that is the only way I fill my pipeline.
Wonderful. Okay, and I think we'll take one more just so we
Okay.
can kind of honor everyone's time today, but
Good.
there's so many questions in here. We'll have
I'll
to,
reply if you send me the spreadsheet. I'm happy to reply to the questions.
yes, Sherry will definitely respond to you. I know she's
Yeah.
so good about that. So the last one we have, Sherry, this one is great. It's from Claudia. She says, should a new development director be responsible for asking the board about their commitments to this, or is it best for the chair or president to handle that? Should the new person be doing it, or should someone who's been there longer handle that conversation?
If it was your first year, I mean, obviously it's going to depend on the relationships and some nuances here, but I would say it maybe could be a shared thing. Like if there was your ED and yourself, or maybe the board chair and yourself. It could be a shared thing if you felt a little uncomfortable. To me, I feel like get in that rhythm early. Get in that, hey, we're going to meet, right before the fiscal year every year, and then we're going to meet quarterly and talk about, our shared portfolio. We're going to talk about how I can serve you this year. We want to make sure that, we're really investing in your mission for giving. So I think my answer to that would be, why not? Because the sooner you can do that, the sooner you actually can start forming relationships and building their confidence in you, because you're doing such an awesome job. And that, oh gosh, we want to introduce our network to this fundraiser because like she's doing a knock-up job here. It's fantastic. So I would say let them have the confidence in you and lead them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sherry.
Thank
All right,
you.
well, like we said, all those questions, if we didn't get to yours, we will follow up with you. Sherry will write back to you very soon, so we'll get this over to her. And yeah, just on behalf of Firespring, thank you all so much for joining us today. I know an hour these days online is more valuable than ever, so we appreciate you taking the time to spend it with us and with Sherry and tuning in today. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Have a great one.